The news spread like fire, and it felt like the entire gospel world stopped breathing for a moment. It all started when breaking news announced that Bishop J. Drew Sheard, a man known for strength, leadership, and unshakable faith, had been rushed to the hospital at the age of 66. People could not believe it. The same man who guided thousands, the same man who stood tall in every storm, was suddenly fighting a battle no one saw coming. You won't believe how quickly everything changed that day. Let me tell you, this was not just another health scare. This moment shook the community to its core and left everyone asking the same question. What really happened behind those closed doors? At first, the story felt unreal. Bishop Sheard was always seen as powerful, full of life, full of energy. But insiders quietly whispered that something had been wrong for a while. This is how the truth slowly started slipping out. Those close to him said he had been feeling tired for months, but he never talked about it publicly. His smile, his sermons, his presence, everything looked perfect on the outside. But here is the shocking part. Behind that strong image, he was fighting silent battles. He brushed aside chest discomfort, pushed through dizziness, and kept working as if nothing was wrong. He did not want people to worry. He did not want anyone to think he was weak. This is where it gets interesting, because the same strength that made him a respected leader was the same reason he hid the signs of danger. People around him noticed small changes. He moved slower. He sat down more often. Sometimes he caught his breath after walking just a few steps, but he laughed it off, joked about being tired, and kept pushing forward. What makes this story different? It was the secrecy. Only a few family members and advisors knew he had not been feeling well. Even they did not know how serious it had become. He was carrying the weight of his ministry, his family, and his responsibilities, while ignoring the weight inside his own body. Then came the day that changed everything. It started like any normal morning. The bishop attended a meeting, spoke to a few people, and tried to follow his usual routine. But destiny took an unexpected turn. By midday, he felt a strange weakness spreading through his body. His family noticed he was pale, holding his chest, and struggling to stay steady. What happened next felt like a scene no one wanted to witness. The craziest part was how fast things went downhill. One minute he was talking, and the next he was gripping the edge of a table, trying to stay upright. His family rushed to him, panicking as he complained of severe chest pain and dizziness. Within minutes, someone called an ambulance. Sirens filled the air, and neighbors watched in confusion as paramedics hurried him away. Inside the ambulance, the situation turned intense. Machines beeped nonstop. Paramedics tried to keep him awake. The ride felt endless for his family, who followed in their cars with tears in their eyes. For years, he had been the rock, the leader, the voice of strength. But now he lay there, weak and fighting. When they reached the hospital, doctors rushed him into emergency care. His family waited outside in silence, praying, shaking, trying to understand how a normal day had turned into a nightmare. There had been no warning, no obvious signs, no time to prepare. It was a harsh reminder that even the strongest people can break without showing it. People inside the church community began hearing whispers of what happened, and panic spread fast. Social media exploded with questions, prayers, and fear. Fans, ministers, families, everyone was asking the same thing. How could this happen so suddenly? But here is the shocking part. The doctors discovered something unexpected, something that made the situation even more serious than anyone imagined. And the truth they were uncovering inside that hospital would not only shake his family, but also raise questions about the future of his ministry, his leadership, and the trust people placed in him. The hours inside the hospital passed slowly, filled with fear, confusion, and silence that felt heavier than words. Doctors moved quickly around him, trying to understand what had pushed his body to this breaking point. His family stood outside the room, watching every movement through the small window, their hearts sinking each time they saw a doctor walk in with serious eyes. You won't believe how tense that hallway felt. People who had always seen the bishop as a symbol of strength now felt helpless, unable to do anything except wait and pray. Let me tell you, when someone who always stands tall suddenly falls, the shock changes everything. Inside the emergency room, doctors ran urgent tests. Machines continued to beep sharply, and the nurses' voices stayed low and steady as they worked. But here's the shocking part. As the results started coming back, the medical team realized the situation was more complicated than they expected. This was not just fatigue or stress. There were signs of deeper issues that had been building quietly for months. This is where it gets interesting because even the doctors were surprised by what they saw. They wondered how he had kept going with such pressure on his body. What makes this story different? It was the hidden strain he had carried, the kind that does not show on the outside until it explodes without warning. While the medical team worked, the waiting room filled with close friends, church members, and leaders who rushed to the hospital as soon as they heard the news. Many of them had never seen the bishop in a weak moment. Some sat with their hands covering their faces, others whispered prayers, and a few stood frozen, staring at the floor as if waiting for someone to say it was all a mistake. The craziest part was how fast the news spread. Within an hour, social media was filled with posts, videos, and messages of concern. People shared photos of him preaching, singing, and praying, all asking the same question: how did this happen? As the online world grew louder, the inside of the hospital grew quieter. A nurse stepped out once, only to say he was still being evaluated. That single sentence felt like a heavy stone dropped in the middle of the room. His family members sat close together, holding hands tightly. Some cried silently, others tried to stay strong. Destiny took an unexpected turn that day, and everyone felt it. Even those who had seen him the night before said he had looked perfectly fine, full of life. No one could make sense of how a man who appeared unshakable could suddenly be fighting for stability. After hours of waiting, the first set of results came in, and the expressions on the doctors' faces said everything without a single word spoken. They asked the family to step into a private consultation room, a moment that made everyone's breath stop. Let me tell you, the silence in that room before the doctor spoke was painful. When he finally explained what they found, the entire family froze. You won't believe how serious the situation had become. The doctor explained that the bishop's body had been fighting signs of strain and pressure for far longer than anyone realized. He had pushed himself past the limit, and now his body was demanding rest in the harshest way possible. But here is the shocking part. Even with all the pressure he had been facing, he never told anyone how bad he felt. He kept preaching, traveling, leading, and serving as if nothing was wrong. He never slowed down, never complained. This is how leaders often hide their own pain to stay strong for others. But in his case, the cost had become life-threatening. The family sat in disbelief, some crying, some shaking their heads in confusion. This is where it gets interesting because the doctor then revealed one more detail, one that made everyone realize how close they were to losing him. After hearing the doctor's words, a heavy silence filled the room. The family struggled to process the reality. Bishop J. Drew Sheard, the man who had always been the foundation of so many lives, was suddenly fragile, vulnerable, and in urgent need of care. The tension was almost unbearable. You won't believe how fast emotions shifted from hope to fear and back again. Let me tell you, it was a mix of panic and prayers, whispers of disbelief, and quiet sobs. Every family member seemed to relive every moment he had ever pushed himself, every late night sermon, every meeting, every time he put others before himself. The truth was painfully clear. No matter how strong someone appeared, even the strongest can face battles no one can see. Inside the hospital room, Bishop Sheard lay quietly, sometimes drifting in and out of consciousness. Nurses described him murmuring faint words of reassurance to his family, telling them not to worry, even as he fought for his own stability. The craziest part was how, in the middle of such a personal struggle, he still thought of others first. This is where it gets interesting. His strength wasn't just physical, it was the kind of spiritual and emotional endurance that made people see him as a pillar, someone untouchable. But behind that image, the man they all admired was human, fragile, and dependent on the care of others. The family now realized how much he had hidden, and the weight of decades of selflessness became painfully clear. The hospital stay stretched on, and each passing hour revealed new layers of concern. Doctors discovered that his condition, though stabilized, required careful monitoring. The seriousness of the situation forced conversations that no one expected. What makes this story different? Questions about leadership, responsibilities, and the future of his ministry began surfacing quietly in the background. Some insiders feared that if recovery took too long, the church might face unprecedented challenges. At the same time, the family wondered how much longer he could continue at the same pace, the pace that had defined his life for decades. The sudden realization that even a revered leader could be so vulnerable sent shockwaves through everyone who knew him personally or admired him from afar. While the family remained vigilant, the church community outside grew restless. Social media posts flooded in, prayers, messages, and calls for strength. Hashtags and videos spread the news faster than anyone imagined. Yet, amid the noise, very few knew the full story. Some church members speculated about what could have happened. Some feared the worst, and others simply prayed for guidance. But here's the shocking part. The reality of his struggle was far deeper than anyone imagined. The hospital moments, filled with quiet desperation, whispered prayers, and constant monitoring, were scenes no one outside those walls could fully understand. This is how faith met fragility, and leadership met vulnerability. As the day turned into night, insiders revealed details that added more tension to the story. Bishop Sheard had been experiencing subtle health issues, fatigue, elevated blood pressure, occasional chest discomfort, but he had hidden them from everyone, including his closest aides. His determination not to worry the congregation or alarm anyone had pushed him into secrecy. This secrecy, while admirable in its intent, created a dangerous situation. And yet, even in that moment of crisis, he maintained a calm, reflective attitude. Destiny took an unexpected turn, and the bishop's struggle became a powerful lesson for everyone. No matter how strong, no one is untouchable, and sometimes even the bravest need help. As the days passed, Bishop Sheard slowly began to regain his strength, though the tension in the air never fully disappeared. The family stayed by his side, offering comfort, holding his hand, and whispering words of encouragement. Friends, aides, and church leaders visited quietly, each one sensing the gravity of the moment. The bishop himself reflected deeply on the events, surprisingly candid about his vulnerabilities. Let me tell you, this was a side of him that few had ever seen. He admitted that he had ignored his own health for too long, that he had carried the weight of his ministry and family without pause, and that this hospitalization had forced him to face his own limits. This is where it gets interesting. Suddenly, the man who had always been a pillar of unwavering strength was becoming a symbol of human fragility and resilience at the same time. Even as he recovered, small but significant changes became evident. He began delegating more responsibilities, focusing on mentoring the next generation of ministers, and taking moments for his personal well-being. The craziest part was how intentional he became about balancing faith, family, and self-care. He wrote notes of encouragement, spoke privately with young leaders, and offered prayers for everyone who visited. What makes this story different? The bishop, who once carried the weight of so many on his own shoulders, was now learning to share that burden, teaching by example that leadership also meant knowing when to step back and care for oneself. The church community, while relieved by his recovery, continued to face uncertainty. Discussions arose about leadership succession, delegation of duties, and how to support the bishop while respecting his health. Social media remained filled with prayers, encouragement, and speculation about what the future held. Yet, even amid all the public attention, the bishop remained focused on reflection and transformation. Destiny took an unexpected turn in more ways than one. This near tragedy was reshaping not only his approach to life and ministry, but also the way his congregation understood leadership, strength, and vulnerability. By the end of his hospital stay, Bishop Sheard had gained more than just physical strength. He had a renewed sense of purpose. He spoke openly about mortality, the importance of family, and the necessity of balance. He inspired those around him not just with sermons, but through his actions and honesty about facing personal struggles. You won't believe how this experience changed him. It had transformed a leader who seemed untouchable into a man who was both strong and human, whose journey now carried a deeper, more relatable message for everyone who had ever looked up to him. And as he slowly returned to his ministry, it became clear that the next chapter of his life and work would be defined not just by faith and leadership, but by reflection, care, and an understanding that even giants must pause, heal, and sometimes change direction entirely. The story left everyone with one lingering thought. Even the most powerful and revered figures are human, and life's unexpected turns can teach lessons that no one sees coming. But here is the shocking part. The bishop's resilience, his reflection, and his renewed purpose promised a future that was both inspiring and unpredictable, leaving the gospel community in awe of the man who had faced his fragility head-on and emerged stronger, wiser, and deeply transformed.